Welcome, people, and thank you for tuning in. This is the Sports Underground Podcast with Baron Graft.
The revolution will not be televised, not be televised.
And look who's coming up.
Do you know how I get up to my game? Do you know?
I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
Just win, baby.
That's the winner!
And now, from Hotbox Studios in Burbank, California, which is literally an 8x10 box in Baron's garage, your host, Baron Graft.
Hey, what is happening, folks? It's the Sports Underground, episode number 57. I'm your host, Baron Graft. This is the Daryl Kyle episode of the Sports Underground. Daryl Kyle, pitcher in the major leagues for the Astros, pitched for the Rockies, and pitched for the St. Louis Cardinals. Died suddenly, unexpectedly in 2002. The big blow to the Cardinals organization. Big blow to all three of those organizations. Just a great guy. Good player. Had a nasty curve. Just a filthy curveball. They had to clean the ball off every time he threw it. That curve was so filthy. War number 57. Daryl Kyle. And got a bunch of stuff to get into tonight. Just full disclosure. I'm not 100% tonight. Started feeling a little bit sniffly earlier today, so if I sound a little bit clogged up, that's what's going on. But I'm a gamer. I got it. Whatever I got, I'll bring it. I got you, coach. I'm in. Let's play. I got 60%. You're going to get 100% of my 60%. That's what you're going to get. I'm probably closer to 68, 72, somewhere in that range. Kind of feeling that right now. But you're going to get 100% of it tonight. Everything I got. So got a bunch of stuff to get into. Gonna recap the World Series. St. Louis Cardinals clinched the World Series on Friday night. Gonna recap that and let you know where I think that World Series between the Cardinals and the Rangers stands in the all-time World Series rankings. Gonna talk NFL in the first block as well. Then on the second half of the show, we're gonna talk college football. We're gonna talk hockey. For you puckheads out there, going to talk hockey in the second block in the NBA. Rant on that a little bit if I've got time. But hey, I'll tell you what, if you like hockey, if you want to hear about hockey, we're going to talk about it. And as long as the players and the owners in the NBA can't come to an agreement, that's pretty much what we got. Football and hockey. I love hockey, so I'm cool with that. So just diving right in. Also, this is obviously, it's Halloween. Happy Halloween to everybody. Everybody be safe out there. This is the annual kickoff for desperate single females. Just putting themselves out there in a big way on Halloween. No judgment, not judging, just stating a fact. Lots of women out there trying to catch a dude to take the Thanksgiving dinner. You know, that's going down. So the Halloween, I'm not going to play any hokey Halloween music, but we will have a trick or treat theme running through the Sports Underground tonight. So to kick it off, a listener, good friend of mine, Amy Mack, asked me a question. She asks, should her husband, who is not a Cardinal fan, by the way, should her husband go as a Cardinal fan for Halloween? And, you know, my answer to this is quite honestly, why not? I mean, you might as well pretend to be a Cardinal fan on the one day that you can pretend to be something you're not, and it's cool. Because I'll tell you what, over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months, you're going to see a lot of pretend Cardinal fans that aren't really Cardinal fans. I watched it happen in 2006 when the Cards won the series. Sure, it's going to happen again. So I say, why not, Amy Mack? So, you know, the Cardinals won the World Series. That was one of the best World Series that I've ever seen. And it got me thinking of where I'm going to put this one. Where do I stack this up as, you know, World Series performances go? Not by any one team, by both teams. Where does it sit in the history of the World Series? I've still got it. I could see an argument for putting this in the top 5. So here's what I've got. I've got the Yankees and the Dodgers in 1956. Don Larson threw his perfect game in that series. I wasn't alive, but the accounts that I've heard of it was that it was just riveting, like it was the buzz of the nation. So, and the other thing is it's rare to see a perfect game at all, much less in the World Series. So, hasn't been done since. So, until somebody else throws a perfect game in the World Series, there's nothing else that is really on par with that. That single game crystallizes that entire World Series, and to me, that's number 1 right out of the gate. Number 2, 1991, the Twins and the Braves. You had the Twins with Kirby Puckett hitting his Game 6 home run. That's when Jack Buck originally made that call. We'll see you tomorrow night. The Twins overcame that, and then in Game 7, they had Jack Morris, who pitched just an epic game in Game 7. I mean, just really great baseball. So that's my number 2. Number 3 is 1993 Blue Jays over the Phillies. That's when Joe Carter hit the series winning. He won the World Series on a walk-off home run in Game 6. And again, that's something that's never happened before. Nobody's clinched a World Series with a home run before that. So it was just an epic moment. Hasn't happened since either. So that's 3. Now, in the top 5, there are arguments to be made for several games, and certainly I think the 2011 Cardinals-Rangers series has a place in this argument. There are also about 3 series in the 60s that I think bear mentioning. You've got 1965, the Dodgers of the Twins. Sandy Koufax throws a complete game shutout in Game 7. I think the Dodgers only scored like 1 or 2 runs for him in that game. That was an epic series going back and forth. You got the Cardinals and the Yankees in 1964. Bob Gibson had 27 total innings pitched in that World Series. He pitched 3 games in that World Series, essentially. So that was epic. And then in 1960, you've got the Pirates and the Yankees. You got Bill Mazeroski hitting his home run in that one. So those are all 3 I think they bear mentioning. Now, I would probably say 2011 Cardinals-Rangers goes in the 4 spot, and those others can battle it out for the 5. But that's what I got. I mean, that was epic. Albert Pujols had a monster game. David Freese obviously had a monster game, but don't forget, Derek Holland pitched very well in the World Series. That bears mentioning. Mike Napoli played just insane, out of his mind in that World Series. I think somebody might have said something about it. Oh, yeah, that was us. That's right. That's right. I told you about Mike Napoli before the series started. Just saying. Moving over to the NFL. Going to talk a lot of NFL. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because a lot of people are going to jump to criticize Tim Tebow. The Broncos got blown out by the Lions. And, I could break down his game and I could tell you all the mistakes that he made, but I think plenty of people are going to do that. Here's what I took exception to. And it's not, some people think I hate Tim Tebow. I don't hate Tim Tebow. There are things that bother me in this world. And the thing that bothers me about Tim Tebow is, just like when he was at Florida, every time he would win, he's got everything to say about, thanking God and, falling on his faith and all that. But when he loses, he's crying on the bench. Like, where's God in the loss? And, we saw it again this week because, last week they come back, they beat Miami. He takes a knee and does his, praying thing. And now this whole internet phenomenon. If you haven't seen the internet phenomenon of Tebowing, make sure you check that out. I think it's already jumped the shark, but that's just my opinion. So they beat Miami, they get the win, and he drops to a knee immediately after the game to do his prayer or whatever. They get blown out by the Lions, and he doesn't drop. Like, where's God? Like, if this is what you're going to put out there, if this is who you are publicly, then to me, a greater demonstration of faith is if you're doing the exact same thing, win or lose. So that's my only beef, and I'm going to drop it at that. And then moving through, I'm not going to break down a bunch of games. There were some horrible performances this week. There were some good performances this week, but I'm going to cover it all in a trick or treat kind of thing. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to give you some teams and one player that, in the trick or treat category. So to kick it off, we're looking at the Baltimore Ravens, and the Baltimore Ravens barely escaped Arizona this week. And you remember last week they got beat by Jacksonville in just an embarrassing fashion. They also got caught by Tennessee and lost in week 2. So for me, Baltimore, despite their record and they look pretty good on paper, I'm calling them a trick. I don't see it. And especially seeing how Pittsburgh handled their business against New England, I don't think Pittsburgh's done winning that division. That's all I'm saying. On the other hand, Buffalo, I'm going to call them a treat, but with a caveat, a treat to win a wild card spot and make the playoffs. They've still got 2 games against the Jets. They got to travel to San Diego in week 14, and then they got a game at New England in week 17. Those are their only tough games left. So I see them as a real contender for this wild card spot. Don't see them getting past New England for the division. That's just my opinion. New Orleans, the Saints, lost to the Rams. A week after you blow out the Indianapolis Colts, you lose to another winless team. And I'm calling them a trick at this point. I know they're leading their division, but, they put a lot of points on the board, but they're 15th in overall team defense, and they're 23rd versus the run. They still got 2 games left versus Atlanta. They go and they host Detroit in week 13. They're at Minnesota in week 15. And I just look at that and I think, at Minnesota, that's a team that runs the ball a lot and well. I'm just saying, I think Atlanta's going to track them down. I really do. My buddy Bob wants to know if I think his Philadelphia Eagles, watching them dismantle the Dallas Cowboys, wants to know if I think Philly, is this a trick or a treat? And I'm going to call it a treat. And I'm just going to say they're a treat to make the playoffs. I'm not ruling them out of winning the NFC East, but I think at the very least they're going to pull down a wild card spot. I mean, first of all, everybody else in the NFC East looks terrible. I mean, you want to talk about Halloween, it's a nightmare in the NFC East. The Giants had to come back to beat Miami. Sorry, color me not impressed. Washington got spanked by Buffalo, and the Cowboys are just in full-scale collapse. So that's that one. I'm going to call San Diego, moving on, the Chargers. I'm going to call them a trick to win the AFC West, even though they're leading. They really need a win on Monday Night Football and Halloween at Arrowhead. 2 of their 3 losses this year have come on the road. They had another close call at Denver. And they've still got road games at Chicago, at Jacksonville, at Detroit, at Oakland in Week 17, at Oakland. That could be a loss to decide the division. I don't know. I'm just saying. And then finally, your final treat of the evening is Von Miller in Denver. I'm calling him the rookie of the defensive rookie of the year out there in Denver. He's got 6 sacks, 26 combined tackles. Thank God something good is happening in Denver. Looking back at the weekend, I'm calling Pittsburgh versus New England the game of the week. This is a huge thing because I think it has real potential to be a playoff preview game between the Steelers and the Patriots. And Pittsburgh was all banged up, and they still took care of business. So don't count them out yet. Player of the week, Steven Jackson. I'll give honorable mention to Roethlisberger and McCoy here. Ben had a big game for Pittsburgh, and LaShawn McCoy had a big game for Philly. But the Rams were supposed to get blown out by New Orleans. Steven Jackson, running back for the Rams, puts the team on his back. Puts up 2 touchdowns, 159 yards. They upset the Saints in a game that wasn't supposed to be close. So some people say, oh, Eli Manning, he led the comeback. That's against Miami. You're supposed to beat Miami, So Steven Jackson, great game. Watch for an upset in Monday Night Football. That's all I'm saying. So, moving to the second half of the show. This song here is called Eighth Wonder by Sugar Hill Gang. I dig this track. You might hear a little, if you keep your ear to the grindstone, you might hear a little sample that comes back, makes a comeback at the end of the show. I dig this song. It's a good song to get down to. We look at college football. The top 5 teams as put out there by the Sports Underground. Number 1, LSU. Number 2, Alabama. Number 3, Oklahoma State. Number 4, Boise State. Number 5, Stanford. November in college football, it's time to move on up if you're unbeaten. It's time to move on down if you're taking L's. With the exception of LSU at Alabama in the coming week, none of these top 5 teams play each other. And so that means everybody controls their own fate. Boise State kind of has some challenges because, again, their strength of schedule is not that great. And even if they win out, it's still a good chance they're going to get passed up by Stanford. But the deal in the BCS is if you're going to lose, you should lose early. Definitely before November. So teams taking losses at this point really putting themselves behind the 8 ball. Oklahoma, Oregon, Arkansas, they only have 1 loss, and they lost early. So they've got an outside shot to still make the championship. They're going to need help, though. You look at Clemson, who lost this weekend. You look at Kansas State, who lost this weekend. But they lost before November, technically, but they both lost in ugly fashion. So that's it. We've got a couple of teams out here. We're looking at a list of some college football trick-or-treaters out there looking for some championship candy. So looking ahead, we're going LSU, Alabama. We're going treat and treat both there. Nothing's new. These are easily the 2 best teams in the country, without question. LSU is scary. Yeah, they're scary good, and Bama's a nightmare. So this upcoming game is great. It's huge. They should both expect to win out after this. So safe to say that the winner of this week's game between LSU and Alabama is going to play for the championship. Oklahoma State, treat? Really? The Pokes, they're earning a little respect now. The big knock on Oklahoma State is that their defense isn't that great. They're ranked 110th out of 120 in the nation. But the key thing to remember is that their turnover margin is plus 19. So they give up a ton of yards between the 20s, but then they take the ball away, and then they march right down the field and score on you. So they have 4 turnovers more than the second best team in turnover margin, and that's LSU. And everybody slobbers over the LSU defense. So Oklahoma State's a team to keep your eye on. The bottom line is when you give an offense that good, you give them the ball that much, you're going to lose. They might not make the title game, but this is a good football team. So if you're a Sooner fan and you don't like hearing that, you might want to get used to it. So we'll see. Boise State, calling this a trick. And listen, the Broncos are good, but because of their strength of schedule, they keep slipping every week. They should be a treat, but the problem is their schedule is just not that great. They got a win early on against Georgia, who's looking like an average SEC team at best. And, that's just not good enough. They got their 2 hardest game of the seasons coming up at TCU and at San Diego State, and those just aren't going to help them enough. I think they can win out, and they're still going to get jumped by our next team, which is Stanford, who's a treat. Why? Because the Cardinals have a little luck on their side. You see what I did there? You see how it's a play on work at Andrew Luck? So they got luck. They're a little lucky. It looks like that's all you're going to need. This looks to us at the Sports Underground, it looks like Stanford is the only unbeaten team left that can actually physically match up with either LSU or Alabama. And I don't know if it's just because they're out west. Maybe people don't view them as tough. But the Cardinal went down to USC over the weekend. They pushed the Trojans around. And even though that game went into overtime, for a majority of that game, Stanford was just doing what they wanted to do. Their only big games left are both at home. They play Oregon and Notre Dame both at Stanford. So look for Stanford to keep climbing up, and it's going to come down to I believe it's going to come down to Oklahoma State or Stanford. If somebody loses, then obviously the other one's in. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Arkansas, one-loss team. We're calling them a trick. They have a chance to move up if they can win out because their only loss was at Alabama. And they've been forgotten, and there's a reason. It's because their whole thing is smoke and mirrors. In their last 2 games, they've had to make big-time comebacks against, Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. They have to get past South Carolina this week. No guarantee that's going to happen. The last game of their schedule this year is at LSU. So if they can win that one, along with every other game on their schedule, and every other team in front of them loses, they got a shot at the BCS championship. Hold your breath for that one. Hold on. Keep believing that, Arkansas. Keep believing that. Try to get some running water in your trailer, too, by the way. Oregon, the Ducks, we're calling them a trick. They're going to lose to one, if not both, of the 2 difficult games they've got on their schedule that remain. They got to go to Palo Alto and play Stanford, like we mentioned before, and they have Southern Cal at home. Now, if they win those 2 games and win out, they still need some help. They need all the unbeatens to lose. They might need Oklahoma to lose again. But simply put, if this team doesn't make it to the Pac-12 title game, they're done. They're done. They're a good team, but at this point, there's too many balls in the air. There's too many variables for them to really have a shot. Oklahoma, as tough as it is to say, because we've been high on Oklahoma all year long, at this point, they're a trick. Because even if they win out, which they very well may, they typically, Oklahoma, after they lose one game, they just run the table. They play really well. So they might move up a little bit if they can beat Oklahoma State, but Stanford has to lose. If Stanford loses, OU's got a shot, because you're going to move past Oregon. If you win out, you're already ahead of Arkansas, like we said. But it's tough. If the loser of the LSU-Alabama game, if they've got 1 loss, are they going to drop below Oklahoma? I don't really see that. So I'm calling it a trick at this point. Looking at the Heisman race, the top 5, Andrew Luck clearly distancing himself. He had 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this was the first time that Stanford really got tested on the road at USC. They were down. They had to come back. They had to perform in overtime. but he can really get it done. And it was that adversity that really allowed him to show everybody what he's really about. And I mean, it was crazy to watch that game and watch what he was able to do. Kellen Moore is still number 2, despite the fact that he didn't play this week. He's a quarterback at Boise State. Trent Richardson also had an off week, but he's the running back at Alabama. He's got to go play LSU next. And if he has a big game against LSU, then Andrew Luck might have something to worry about. But if he doesn't get it done, this is essentially going to be a 2-man race between Kellen Moore and Andrew Luck. And remember, Kellen Moore is trying to track down that all-time winningest college football quarterback record that Colt McCoy has. I can't remember. He either can tie it this coming week or surpass it this coming week. So, but Trent Richardson's the wild card in the Heisman talk. So that's your college football. Going to switch gears here a little bit. We've talked a little bit of NHL. We're going to talk a lot more NHL going forward, as we mentioned. So just to kind of warm you up into the NHL season, over the past week, there have been some teams that have been a real treat to watch. Number 1, the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're 3rd best in goals against. They got the 2nd best penalty kill. And they won 5 games in a row before they lost to Toronto on Saturday. So Pittsburgh looks great. Dallas, surprisingly, Dallas is emerging. They've got they're top 5 in goals against. They're 1st place in the Pacific. Nobody saw that coming. The Maple Leafs up in Toronto, 3. They just keep scoring. Every time you turn your head, they're putting the biscuit in the basket. The big lights going off and the horns sounding. So, Toronto's something. Washington, the Capitals, they're scoring nearly 4 goals a game right now. They're top 3 in the power play. I mean, this is a great team. Chicago's coming on strong. The Blackhawks, number 1 penalty kill in the league. The bottom 5, Columbus, 1 win. Yikes. The Winnipeg Jets, glad they're in Winnipeg, but they've only got 3 points so far. And Boston, I mean, Boston's a big surprise here. What do they got, a Stanley Cup hangover? I don't know, but they don't look good. Calgary's kind of stuck in the middle. But, you know, they're just a middle-of-the-road team. They are playing a little better than expected. And, you know, the New York Islanders, wheels starting to fall off. They're decent, but they've lost 5 in a row. So that's your hockey round out. This song is Woo-Ha, Busta Rhymes, 1996, number 57. So that's your song of the week, weekend, week, whatever. Whatever you do, wherever y'all do it, keep right.
You have been listening to the Sports Underground podcast. And don't forget, we always welcome your take. So hit Baron up on Twitter at bgraft, that's BGRAFFT, or send us an email at sportsunderground@gmail.com. If you like a download of this program, check us out on iTunes. Remember, come back again next time and get some.
You're now rocking with the best. Busta Rhymes coming through from the footmost squad. Boy Scouts who I be, straight to your dome. We coming straight to your dome, bringing all you ruckus to all you rap motherfuckers. Boy Scouts who I be, flip mode is the squid on. Busta Rhymes break it down like this.
Yo, which motherfucker stole my flow? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Throw them type of right out my window. Blast your shit you with a direct blow. Blow, coming through like G.I. Joe. Star Wars moving ill like Han Solo. Make you bounce around like this was Calypso. Always shine cause I got the high pro glow. You think that you can hide, you think you can lay low. Roll up on your eyes like Hawaii 5-0. Mac out with my dreads and my Kango. Forget the moment, just past the Cisco. Yo, take a trip down to Mexico. Come back with that shit that might make you psycho. Maximum frequency through your stereo. Sorry, this is it, but homeboy, I got to go. I step up in the place and you watch them correct. Got you all in check. I got that head notch that make you break your neck. I got you all in check. And you know we come through to wreck hands up in the air and never disrespect. Cause I got you all in check.